Hi, Brian here with DIY Outdoor Life. Today we're going to be continuing our series on the maintenance of teardrop campers, and we are going to be talking about how to repair, inspect, and replace the waterproof seaming on our camper. So let's get started. Now the first thing we need to do is wash our camper. Now I attached a video in this series on how I wash teardrop campers. Might seem straightforward, but I included some tricks there to help you do a better job. Once the camper has sufficiently dried, I begin to inspect the seams, and I use the towel when I'm doing that just to make sure that there's no extra water that stayed on these seams that are going to need to be repaired. Now I'm looking for three things when I inspect seams. The first is just a small perforation, either an air bubble in how it was applied or just a small spot that's starting to separate, and it looks like I have one here. The next thing I'm looking for is any old or dried adhesive or sealant that has just been broken down over time. Now this camper's pretty new, so I don't have any of that, but that's pretty easy to identify. The last thing I'm looking for is any over-applied or poorly applied adhesive or sealant. I'm using these terms interchangeably because the modern products are really both. But this camper has one of the worst examples of this that I've ever seen. This seal here actually came from the factory this way. It's hard to tell whether there was a problem they were trying to fix, or I don't know, it's the pandemic. It could have been bring your kid to work day, but this is an example of a seam that I'm definitely gonna have to remove before I can get started. So the key to this project is knowing the right materials and the right tools that we need to do. They're really gonna make the job a lot easier and set us up for success. The first one that I use is a drip-free caulk gun from Newborn. I'll include a link to all of these in the description. I spent less than $40 on this whole job, and 90% of it I'm going to be able to reuse. The one exception is I generally don't reuse the sealant that I use, but if I only use a little bit, I usually pass it on to my father or somebody else in the family who has a camper, but this typically doesn't store so well. Everything else I plan to use for a lifetime. So this first one is a drip-free caulk gun from Newborn. It's much more heavy duty, has a nicer handle on it, but the real feature to this one is that it backs the cam off when you're not using it. So when I go to work on sealant, it doesn't discharge like a caulk snake out onto the table. The time that I save using this caulk gun for a number of projects is really worth every penny. I think this thing costs like 11 or 12 bucks. If you have one of these box store caulk guns, do me a favor and give it to someone you don't like, or sell it at a yard sale, because you're gonna waste so much product and you're gonna spend so much time cleaning up a mess using these. You should definitely get rid of that. Now, the next product I'm going to use is Pro Flex RV. This product is made by GeoCell. Again, I'll put a link in the description to all the different colors. I'll be using clear today. This is the product that we want to use, and this is the industry secret for a lot of this stuff. This is going to adhere to all the different surfaces on our camper, and it's going to be easy to use and last for several years depending on how much light your camper's in. Now, we do not want to use silicone. We do not want to use gutter caulk or kitchen products. You're going to meet some full-timer on the road who tells you that you can melt, Christmas tinsel with diesel fuel and it makes the best seal. That's not the case. This is the product that we want to use, so I can't recommend that enough. Again, I'm not sponsored by any of these products. I've just used them all, and I'm making a recommendation for you. Now, a must for the project is odorless, there we go, is odorless mineral spirits. Now, the trick I have for you is I buy these in the art supply, the arts and crafts section. Again, there'll be a link for this, but if you go to the paint section or go to a hardware store, typically this product is sold in like a 1-gallon metal container. You're gonna use 3 tablespoons of it and then store a volatile chemical in your garage for 40 years. So the best thing to do, this fits in my tool bag, and it's odorless. It's a lot nicer to work with. One of the key tools that you may or may not have heard of is plastic razor blades. Now, this kit that I get comes with 2 and like a lifetime supply of double-sided plastic razors. These tend to be almost as sharp as a metal razor, but because the material is a lot softer, it's not going to damage your camper. So I use these for everything from bumper stickers to decals, but for taking off old sealant, these things are second to none. This is another must-have. The other stuff here is real simple. I use a towel for drying, an old towel for drying. I use a smaller washcloth to prime surfaces with mineral spirits, and I use disposable towels like these Scott's towels. Anything I wipe adhesive on, I'm going to ruin. So if you don't have these, feel free to use some old rags or an old t-shirt. Now, if there was one tool for this job that I use that costs more than just a couple bucks, I use a cordless heat gun to do this. I already had a drill that used this battery, so the bare tool was not that big of an investment. Allows me to work on roofs or work on a campsite where I might not have power hookups. At home, you don't need one of these. You can do just as good a job using a hair dryer. So again, these are all the supplies we need, and this is probably the most critical component of the whole job. For this camper, I'm going to repair all of the small sections first. So I identified a few spots that just had some small separation. Sometimes you can see these better when you press on the two surfaces. First, I'm going to prime the whole area with the mineral spirits on a rag. Now by doing this, I am cleaning any excess debris, any dirt that I might have missed when I was washing it, but I'm also priming the surface for the sealant. Next, I'm going to take my towel and just dry off any of the extra mineral spirits that I applied to this so that it's fairly dry when I begin to apply the sealant. To begin to prep the sealant, I cut the small tip off the applicator. A good rule of thumb here is the less experienced you are at this job, the less you should cut off. By cutting only a small portion off, we have a lot more control out of the product that we're applying. For the same reason, I puncture 3 holes through the seal. If you puncture too many holes here, it tends to come out too fast. If you puncture just one, it takes a lot longer to do the job. Now for doing a job like this, I'm just going to put the smallest amount of sealant at the top of the perforation. Like so. I'm going to wet my finger with a disposable rag with mineral spirits. Now this seam is going to last for years. Now the trick to removing this old sealant, or the trick to removing dried sealant, involves heating up the section. Now the key to what I'm doing here is only doing a small section at a time. The trick is to make sure that the old sealant is hot. So I don't want to heat it up too much, but I also don't want to try to do too much at a time. So notice this first section is completely clean. So once again, I'm going to heat this, scrape it with the plastic razor, and wipe it with a rag with mineral spirits, and you'll see that this job becomes pretty easy. So now in just a couple short minutes, I've removed all of this old or excess sealant. I know a lot of you who've tried this at home, it can take hours and hours and hours. I've seen people use paint scrapers and razor blades or pocket knives, and you end up causing a lot more damage than you actually solve by removing it in that case. So this method of heat, plastic razors, and mineral spirits on a disposable rag is definitely the fastest and cleanest way to do this job. So now we're gonna apply some sealant. Now for this section, I'm definitely gonna get myself into controversy. There is more than one right way to do any job, and what you find a lot of times is the products are developing, and with the development of these products comes newer techniques to apply them and use them properly. For RV sealant, I had an opportunity to speak to somebody at a trade show who was actually instrumental in developing some of these modern products. What they had shared with me was that some of the best, most resilient types of application are hardly used in the field. So what I'd like to do when I replace this seam is to show you one of those methods. Now, because it's hard to get the shots that are gonna show this, I have a little bit of a prop here to demonstrate what I'm talking about. The type of seal that we're gonna go for is a type of convex seal. This is gonna dry in a cylindrical shape. Now, this product is going to adhere to both sides and create a waterproof seal. But by leaving it in this cylindrical shape, obviously a lot smaller than this, it's gonna create a seal that is a lot more flexible and a lot more resilient to things like opening and closing the galleys on our teardrop campers. A traditional seal looks more like this, and this cove shape creates a convex shape because we usually run our fingers down the seam when we're done. So this type of sealant is going to have us apply it and then not touch it with our hands afterwards. So let's check it out. So now that this seal is applied, for the most part, I'm gonna leave it alone. If there's any spot that I made a mistake on, I can wet my finger with mineral spirits and just feather out that small section and let it dry. But by leaving this dry this way, this is gonna be a much more resilient seal that's gonna last a lot longer than if I come along the whole thing and drag it out with my finger. Now, an example of where I will use the old school or the cove style seam is gonna be along the bottom of this galley door. Now, the reason for this is even if I have to apply this a little bit more frequently because it's thinner and less flexible, the amount of water that runs down this galley, it's really best to have it transition off your camper in a fast, clean way. If any droplets get stuck there, it's not going to leak with the other style seal, but you will start to see little discoloration, especially if you're using white. And you know, then somebody comes back with a brush or sprays it with a pressure washer to clean it. So for that reason, I do use these cove style seams whenever I'm doing something horizontal. Now you can go a lot faster now because you're gonna be coming back, so you have an opportunity to fix some of your spots. We're gonna use our disposable rag with mineral spirits, and this is the trick. Only do a couple inches at a time. Now this section only took a couple minutes. Again, the key is just doing a little bit at a time and wiping any excess material off. The beginner's mistake with any of these types of seal is putting too much material on, not too little. I can wait a second here, and with mineral spirits, I can go back and doctor any of the areas that I want to look a little bit better. But we have a real good, strong, long-lasting seal on this camper's galley door. Now, I should mention that the product recommendation is to wear gloves for this. I'm just gonna make sure to wash my hands real well when I'm done. I feel like I have more control without the latex glove on. Now I'm almost done with this camper. I'm gonna continue to inspect and look for any of the seals that I need to mend or replace. Some of the problematic areas on these teardrops are where they curve. This characteristic curve on the front and back is notorious for seals wearing out a little faster. Of course, I'm going to inspect around all of my doors and windows, but if you come in a little closer, I'll show you one of the biggest problematic areas on any camper. This seal that runs along the bottom generally takes some of the most abuse and vibration. It's also one that takes some of the most water, but for one reason or another, a lot of people skip replacing and repairing this seal. Now, where this might not cause water to drop on your head at night, what it will do is trap water in this bottom corner. This is going to lead to mildew, it's going to lead to mold, and possibly even premature rot, depending on the materials that make up your camper. So great, now another job done, and it only took a few minutes. The seals on this camper are gonna last for years now. It's still important to take a look at them, and now we know how to mend them as they come up for some of the littler sections that separate. Right now, I'm gonna get up on the roof and work on the lap sealing. So make sure to check that video out too if you wanna know how to do the seals on your roof. Thanks for watching today. Please like and subscribe, it helps the channel. Check out the links in the description if you need any of these products, and feel free to shoot me an email or leave a comment if you have any suggestions or any different techniques that you use on your campers. Thanks a lot.